meeting of January 14, 2020, LaPorte County Drainage Board to order. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Brzezinski, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Christy, roll call, please.
Hugh Glasgow. Here. Tony Hendricks. Here. Sarah Hefner. Sarah. Here. Rich Mrozinski.
I'm here.
John Coulter. Here. Steve Mrozinski.
Here.
Mike Poland.
Here.
Brad Adamski.
Here. On the pre-reorganization items, could we get a motion to approve the minutes from the December 2019 meeting?
Motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Takes us to our reorganization. Do we have a nomination
I'd like to make a motion that we keep the board exactly the same as it is, including our attorney.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right. I turn the meeting over to the chairman, John Coulter.
Sounds like a railroad job.
Didn't give you a chance to talk.
All right, the Cook Ditch, Jim Parkberg, come on up. And if you would, please introduce yourself, tell us where you're from and what's happening.
All right, my name is James Perlberg. I'm from, I was raised in La Crosse area. And 93, we moved up to Rolling Prairie area, so we farm on both ends of the county, and in between. And so one of our main operations is in La Crosse, and that's where we store our onion sets in the La Crosse location. We raise onion sets for gardening purposes, where we raise them that they're small, and a gardener, we sell them in the trade that a gardener would plant that in their garden. And so because of that, we use a lot of power at that location. And the reason I'm here is because I didn't realize I had already started something that didn't realize I was possibly on the easement on the Cook Ditch. So because of all the power use we have for the onion sets, we store those all winter long, then we process them in the wintertime and then ship them out. And we run a lot of electricity with our fans keeping them dry. 2 years ago, when we had the major flooding, was that 2 years ago or 3 years ago? About this time of year. Yeah, this time of year, almost 2 years ago, we were this close to having the water come into our buildings, which we still had onion sets stored. At that point, though, I realized we found out that we didn't have insurance that would cover that for a flood issue coming into our building. We store our whole year's crop in there and then we ship it out. Anyway, that's just off topic. But the water then came in from the north on that ditch and came across our property. You know, as the water was coming from the northern to the southern, came from the north of the property line, and then later on and then went out the south, and then later on it came from the south, from the Mockler, came back and went north across our property line.
As the water was rising, that was the circle of the events.
Yes. And part of the problem is the state, when they put the culvert underneath 421, the state did not put a large enough culvert in there. And so it was not large enough to handle the water. So we get the east side of La Crosse water coming our way, and then on the other side, the 421, we have the west side of the water go down. And I might be mistaken, and so then I was made aware that I might be on, putting some solar panels. We're putting solar panels for our own electricity use. We're not a solar farm. We're not anything like that. There was some benefit for our operation to put some solar panels up. And so this is where we started putting them. I went to Meridian and did a title search for easements along our property. And Meridian said, well, there's no easements along that side of the property. Okay, good. I'm good. Well, I was made aware that there might be an easement on, for the ditch. I'm sorry. I was not aware. I thought a title search, or easement would do it with Meridian, and that would show up. Well, it didn't. Anyhow, so I was made aware of that. So then I got on to the drainage boards this meeting so that I could, ask for a variance for what I'm doing. I have pictures of what's happening. So here's the property location. Would you guys like me to show you this?
We've got one that we're handing
it's not
back and
that one,
forth
I don't
up
think.
here.
Okay.
It's a
I don't think
smaller
it's-
version,
I don't
so
think
we
it's
might
that one.
like to see yours.
Yeah. It's the same one?
Caveat.
Same one.
Oh, just bigger, that's all it is. Yeah, same one.
So it's right along 421. Proberg Brothers, it's right along 421, and it's just going to be along, the north side of the property. I also have pictures that I took for you guys to see what's going on there. Now, the question was this a regulated ditch at that spot?
Well, I found this map and it shows that as being,
She's trying to tell you to hit your microphone better.
okay, it's on, I need to talk into it. And that shows, on this map, you're on arm number 2.
Okay. I don't know what that means, but
There's
That
the,
means the arm of the cook.
yeah, so like the main part of the cook,
Didn't that change
Goes
names
that way.
on that side?
let's lay this down. And it's hard to read this, like it needs to be colored, but here's the cook, the main arm,
North
the main
there.
ditch, and then like arm. Yeah, this is north, here's lacrosse. So it'll say on here what arm. Okay, so there's lateral 1, arm number 2, arm number 2, main ditch. So that's like
I was thinking
arm 1.
called a different.
It might have I wouldn't be surprised. But I went out and measured, and you're
I was remembering
main
this from
part of those.
a problem we'd had once before. And I was almost certain the cook came down and turned, and this was called something else. as soon
Yeah.
as it
So
hit
I'm
the
assuming you put them right
Yeah.
here, isn't it?
okay.
easement wise
Oh,
or
this way, okay.
money wise, there's, people are paying assessment on that side.
Yeah,
Oh,
this is
one
all.
right here, okay.
On those assessments, does this say cook?
Yeah, just this cook. Yeah. So I measured from the main, where you had the framing, I don't know what you call it, and you were 59 feet from the top of the bank to, so our easement's 75, and you were at 59. So how far further than that
So,
do those panels stick out?
here's a picture of what the panels look like. I've installed these in another location here, which is,
Because they're at an angle,
they're at an angle.
and they're gonna angle towards the south, obviously, right?
So this is for a southern. They're movable depending on the time of year. And you can change the angle. Supposedly, the salesman has told me that you can get 10% more electricity, as you change with the
When you, yeah, that makes
So
sense.
there's that picture. That's how they look. So there's going to be 2 rows of them. And here's the current, so we had started and we were going down
Is the one is the row that you have up, are you going north or south of that?
north.
Ugh.
So, yes.
So you're pretty much gonna block all the access to the ditch.
Well, and so I thought, okay, so if there's times when we've taken care of this ditch. That's the part. There's times when we've taken care of these ditches, done years ago. I remember my dad and uncle, would dip it out and clean. And so there's times years ago. And so I just thought, that's just our responsibility. Take care of this ditch. I don't remember, I think it was not that long ago, maybe someone came in and dipped it as a
Yeah.
part of cleaning up to, I think, was that Scarborough or,
Yeah, he did
been another
some
one.
parts, we've done just parts of it
Yeah.
or
the last
Whitmer?
couple of years. And
Yeah, to the north.
he, Scott, right? Not
That's what he just
Scott.
said.
Well, there's
Mark.
gonna be plenty of room to
Did
Mark?
some of
that
it
ditch.
a couple years ago.
Like other
And
ditches
we did
we've
another
seen.
part a few years before that.
Clean.
And that might have been Mark Whitmer also may have done some of that. So the other set was going to be, depending on what you call the top of the ditch bank, depending where you measure, you could argue. But that was going to be 27 feet. And so I thinking, okay, so if we got to dip it out, because the bank has been breached from flooding, I figured all the spoils would just be put right at the top of the bank. That's where we want them. Matter of fact, I thought of even bringing some other dirt to build that up, because we don't want it through, if we had crops out, let alone if we don't want to flood our onion buildings.
Yeah.
So I just figured the spoils could just be set on top. And so I was just thinking, well, we got to do it. We'll take care of it. No problem.
You and I made a trip down there to look at it, and to me, there's no issues. I mean, you can still clean from his side if it needs to be cleaned. Every ditch is its own ditch. This one's well maintained. There's no trees, there's no brush, nothing. I mean, it's very well maintained and plenty of room to throw the spoils on his side in front of these things. If there wasn't, we could always clean from the other side, but this will work both ways yet.
For me, the kicker was he wants the spoils, and he wants to put them on that 27-foot area, and I think it's okay.
I've always said I gotta see something to put my heart into it, and I don't see any issues here whatsoever.
Is there anything that we need to?
Yeah, I think one key point is, the nature of the structures. Are they permanent or temporary? You said they could be moved. How easy is it to move
When he
them?
said need to be moved, that's to the pit
To
of the
tilt.
sun.
So they're affixed.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're corkscrewed into the ground.
The key difference that makes from a legal standpoint is that he needs permission from you in writing, whether it's in minutes or whatever, to put anything on that easement. If it's of a temporary structure, the landowner can put something on there, but then it's subject to removal at the board's order.
And
But a
that's kind of
permanent-
what you and I told him when we were down there. If something really was of major concern, he'd have to take them down.
But you can build, but we can unbuild if we decide to. But I don't ever see that happening in this case.
That's right.
The ditch is so well maintained, if there was a bunch of trees there, it would be an issue. Right next to your shop, I don't see that ditch ever going, you need it.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Now, if we could just get the state to open up the 421 a little bit better, it would serve us all in the east of 421. It would serve a lot of people. The state kind of screwed
And
up.
to remind other members on the board, it was quite a few years back, west of 421, there was a tank car put in there, and we had that tank car removed because it was blocking up the water flow.
Yep.
At that time, we knew that was bigger than the hole under 421. So we really need to get a letter drafted to the state that they need to make that a bigger hole someday in their plans. Because the watershed is greater than that can handle.
We'll try. Get a hold of John Kruger and ask him. Say that.
But that is something that needs to be addressed there. Because we took the tanker out because it held up water.
Yeah.
And we measured at that time that it actually had larger holes than the hole under 421.
So actually, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that was left over from the old railroad. Some of that structure was the old railroad when they abandoned that. So those were removed at that time, also, and then a tank was moved. Yes. Yep. So.
But that culvert we're talking about, I said 2350 south and 421. It's
So
not.
that's a whole nother issue upstream, downstream, where the banks still aren't at my approval. From Malecki's project, he has done south of 2300. So this culvert that he's talking about is something the state has that's got a flapper gate on it to keep water from the south going north when the river raises.
But that gate's not functioning right now. There's riprap in it.
Yeah,
It needs-
state needs to be made aware with a good letter on that problem too.
They should then we should raise the road because it came over the road really well.
Down there?
Yeah. Well, when it came out on Malecki's, it was just running right across, what is that, 2300?
2300, yeah.
Yeah, there was this much water running across the road.
Now, the one thing, I was gonna bring it up in old business, but while we're on this topic, the banks that are on the west side, banks, I gotta call them levees instead of a ditch bank, and the spoils laying there. The levees that are on the west side of the Mockler are the first levees on the west side of the Kankakee River right there.
Okay.
So Malecki's project needs to be built like the levee south of him and the levee north of him, to those specs,
Okay.
to hold that water in.
Yeah.
Because that was just like taking the bank off of the river at that point. That's why the water came from the north, from La Crosse, across his property. It was headed to the Mockler. Because the Cook was not taking it because of 421.
Yep.
So it was headed to the Mockler then. But when the Mockler, AKA, when the river broke its bank,
Yep.
is on the west side of the Mockler. And what he's got there right now on the west side of the Mockler, south of 2300, in my eyes, cannot hold the Kankakee River in. It
was
needs to
working
be
on-
built to specs of the river, not specs of the Mockler ditch.
Yeah, and wasn't he working on that and was gonna have it done like within a couple years? I think the board gave him like 2 years or something to get that
Well,
done.
according to what you could remember, if you want to speak, I'll let you speak right now, so I
We
can
need
take
to
a
wrap
break.
up him before we get on to this next thing.
I think Paul was in here in March, and he said he was pretty much done until further direction from the board. He did put some back, but probably not enough. But I will say this, there's enough back there for right now until that culvert at 2350 and 421, that flat gate gets fixed, because the water's gonna come in there first.
Okay, I'm hearing something we need to take care of, and that's motioning to allow him to use our 75-foot easement with the hold harmless agreement signed.
Right, and Christie's got a sign of or a copy of the hold harmless for him to sign, so.
All right, so if anyone wants to make the motion to approve that,
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
and we got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries then.
Christie?
So you already got that, because I emailed it to you. You got it done. All right.
So, with this, so we're just satisfied. So basically, then what it is if you need to be, I gotta get off. You need if something
Alright.
happens.
Yeah, did you want that in the minutes that said if he has
If-
to move, then
yeah.
he will do so? Okay.
So, they want to ask Brad if, you know, because I don't know if it's started to include safety to it, the safety for the property and the location.
You already have the site location close enough to attach to this.
Makes me feel better. I got an extra one if you want to put it on there.
Yeah, because we don't necessarily need the deed record in there just so we can identify the property.
That copy that she had.
Okay.
And if there's any other questions for me, great, but if not, I'll
I got one question. Do you have the tomato fields on 150 North by Joe Ekovich's farm?
That one right in front of you. was
Not by
just
Joe
got-
Ekovich's farm on 150 North?
I did
Kind of back
last
then.
year.
What, the year before that, though?
I have before.
Yeah. Well, I grew up on a farm a long, long time ago, and I watched your massive equipment come in, fold up, harvest all those tomatoes and fold up and leave. I can't even put it in words. That was amazing. I've never seen anything like that. That was crazy.
I feel like a carny.
Yeah.
Carnival.
I always say, let the circus begin.
Semi-loads after load after load of tomatoes, and next thing you know, they're packing up this huge equipment and they're gone. It's like,
Yeah.
amazing to me.
Hopefully we didn't destroy or hurt anything. That's not our goal. We want to be good neighbors. The worst thing is to be on the news. So, and that's the same with this. Worst thing is being on the news. We want to be good neighbors. We're very proud of LaPorte County. I'm very proud of where we live, and very thankful for the board and taking care of our waterways. Now, if you can just get the river fixed.
Well, you don't damage the roads, you're good with me.
Well, and we try not to. Matter of fact, we asked the county, we were hauling out over by Young Road, we asked them if they could wait until we were done with harvest, because we didn't want to go with our loads out on a new pavement.
Good idea. Thank you. Thank you for
We try
that.
to be good neighbors as best we can, but you know what? Sometimes we just have to get the crop out.
Thanks for that.
So, thank you all. Appreciate it. Do I need anything to follow up?
You want a copy of the documents you sent, because that's one of the
Correct. If you could email me. the copies.
Yeah, I'll just scan it and email it back to you.
Good. Thank you, guys.
Good. Other topic we'd grown on, do we want to just move that to old business when we get there? And keep the agenda rolling for now? I
You're the
think that's what
president.
we do.
That's fine.
All right. Drain crossing application, BSM groups.
Okay, we actually got a second set of drain crossing apps from NDOT too, so I'll do that after I do this, the BSM. They submitted an application to work over many drains because they're gonna do a directional bore, minimum depth of 48 inches. So they're kind of going all over the county, but there's those plans. But they're gonna be crossing the White Ditch, the Bull Ditch, and the Moon Ditch with their, what are they doing, fiber optic?
Yes.
So they're asking for permission to directional bore underneath the White Ditch, the Bull Ditch, and the Moon Ditch. And then I have details,
Who's BSM groups?
well,
Consultant firm.
yeah, whatever it says on
Consultant
there.
firm that was hired to do the engineering.
This is,
The Moon, the White Ditch, the Bull Ditch, and the Moon Ditch, and that's all up in like Michigan and Springfield Township. There's maps attached to that.
Did they say how deep they're gonna go underneath the water?
Yeah, it says in that, I think it said 48 inches underneath on that application where it says description. I think it's 48.
was this something to do with the water problem that someone brought to us up by I-94?
No, it's just a new fiber optic going through the county.
All right.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, it's going completely under the ditches. They're not going to put any obstructions in the
It impacts
ditches.
their waterways anyway.
48 inches is a little bit close. When you get a backhoe in there cleaning, 6 foot would be better.
The board can ask them to do that.
72 from 48.
So if you guys,
I feel better with that too, because the
Deeper the
boring
better.
machine, they really don't care how deep they go, just to get it under there.
No, they don't.
so you want
How
7,
major of a fiber optic line is it? I mean, what's it hooking to what?
Any fiber optic is something you don't want to touch.
yeah.
And we're approving them to go through our easements. I think we give them a stipulation like you says, let's get it 6 foot under the bottom of the
deeper the
ditch.
better.
Okay.
And make sure they're well marked on each side of the ditch.
Yes, they will be.
They usually do that.
Oh, yeah. internet connectivity.
Do we need to have a motion on that, or just,
I
it's a
would,
recommendation?
I would do the motion since you want to ask for.
Yeah, do it as a formal motion so it'll show up in the minutes.
I second Hugh's motion.
You made that motion,
Yeah,
Steve?
6 foot at least.
Steve seconded it then. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, and the second set of
In that bank.
applications, we got some preliminary
You're president or something.
plans from NDOT, and Tony and I talked to the person on the phone. Yeah, so they want to go under the Crumpacker arm of the Forbes ditch that's in Westville. They want to replace a culvert, an existing culvert, with a new culvert, and they gave us the sizes on that. And then same thing on the Diwali ditch. That's over on 104 on the west side of 104 between 104 and the river. The Diwali, it runs east and west.
This is the county or the state?
NDOT.
NDOT.
This is
They want-
preliminary pre-engineering while they're working on, they have the sizes and they're looking at the physical engineering, the location, and they'll need to do some work to make sure they let the water through while they're still working on the construction site. So they're asking the board to work inside the easement, and they will work on the county, or the state will work on the permission from the owners, either easements or right-of-ways, to fix these culverts and size them appropriately while still maintaining flow while they do the construction. But this is the first step for them to know that they can engineer this and work on the board's easement. And they'll come back to us when they're done and give us prints, and then come back to us again with final as-built.
Is this where we arm wrestle with them?
This is where we let them do this, so they pay for these culverts to get fixed and widened and sized right. We don't have to pay for it.
So why don't we tell them that we'll approve that, no problem, if they take care of the one down by La Crosse
We'll
on
write 'em-
421.
Yeah, this is yes, this is where
Make them aware of it.
we play nice and they play nice with we let them do this, and we talk to, I believe John Kruger's now the head of engineering, so we have very good relations with John, and we'll get them on your other project on 421.
When I emailed this person back, and it was
Trevor Mills.
Trevor Mills was our contact for these. I'll ask him about that pipeline 421. We'll start with them.
Yeah,
And
350.
2350.
421 and
I make a
2050.
motion
No.
to let them use the easement.
That's not the one that needs to be done. It's by Parlberg's north end of their
Well, we
property.
got two of them, 2200 south and 2350.
2350 does not cross underneath 421.
Okay, so you're just,
No, but
got a
there's a
flat
culvert
gate.
there.
Got a
There's a
culvert.
culvert that goes under the old railroad.
Yeah, he's a flat gate, needs to be fixed.
It's not functioning. The flat
Correct.
gate's not functioning.
Yeah, so
Well,
we
It
get them.
doesn't go under 421. The one that goes under 421 that's not the right size
Oh, okay.
2200
is on
south.
the north end of his property.
So we can only ask him about whatever one's under 421. So is that at the 2200 south?
What address is your farm?
22201 South US 420.
It's just north of that.
So be it.
And then we can ask him about this culvert that's got a flap gate that's not working.
Yeah, it's on
It's on the right of
It
way.
doesn't go under 421, but it's clearly on the state right
On
of
the
way.
state right away.
It keeps the Kankakee from getting on the west side of the levee that's on the west side of the Mockler.
Yes.
Okay.
I think, Jim, I'm going to ask you to come back up to the microphone just because of where we're at right now. Because I want these newbies on the board to know what this ditch is that's north of your house. And it has a floodgate on the Mockler. Am I right? Is that the one just north of your house?
You want to show me on the map which one you're talking about? Do we have that beacon map?
Kurt
Frank, yes.
manages that
Yes,
gate on the Mockler.
correct.
And this ditch has been man-made to tie two watersheds together.
Yes.
It flows both ways, right?
It flows both ways. Depending on, most times, the Cook will rise faster, quicker, and we can relieve that pressure out to the river through the Mockler. And then as the river comes up, the Mockler, as that watershed fills, then the Cook, because where it exits is further down in Porter County, then...
Hold on a second. What we're kind of getting at here is specs that the state needs to know about for that culvert that goes under 421 that's too small. Because sometimes that Mockler gets opened up and it's got to get under 421 and get to the Cook to do its job right.
Let me think about that.
And that's
how you're
why you
describing
want
that.
the dike higher along that.
Correct. Most times the Mockler never comes the direction of the Cook. Most times it's only relieving the Cook quicker into the Mockler in the river. And then
So I'm thinking backwards.
I believe so.
I'm thinking it's relieving the Cook if the Cook's rising before the Mockler.
Correct, which is all the town of La Crosse. And so then it gets relieved to the Mockler, and then as the Mockler comes up, then it gets shut off. And Kurt Frank is the guy.
In my mind, the water's all coming from the north to the south down the Kankakee River.
Yeah.
And as the Mockler rises and the Cook is not yet, it can get relieved that way.
But in reality, what happens most times is that the Cook is flowing fast, and the Mockler, the Cook seems to rise quicker, and the Mockler is just a slow
Like a
moving.
local rainfall, when La Crosse gets a 5 or 6 inch rain,
Correct.
this gate needs to get open so it can drain to the Mockler.
Correct. And then
If we have a big rain up north,
Yep.
then those dikes take over on the west side of the Mockler.
Correct, and then the gate gets shut off. Kurt manages that. Kurt Frank manages that, and the gate gets shut off, and then the Mockler does not flow through the Cook. Then. So.
Do we have anywhere else in our county where two watersheds get tied together like this? I'm asking our professionals down here.
You probably, but where? I mean, just offhand.
Probably north, Fish Lake,
All this probably stuff isn't saying, yes, we've got something just
Fish
like
Lake,
that.
Little Kankakee kind of area.
How about downtown LaPorte right
the
now?
drain on the
They
yellow
say they're
Kankakee.
sending some to the Travis.
Those are two watersheds tied together.
Right.
Yeah, but it can't backfeed. You're asking for something that can backfeed, and we don't. We
Well,
have very
this is a very unique thing in our
I
county.
think we have one other that can backfeed.
Yeah.
And all I
around
thought is while we were on this topic, these guys that weren't on this board at that time are aware of what we've got down there.
How far down does the Cook? Where does that enter the Kankakee?
That's got about another,
9 miles.
it goes a long way because it parallels.
Goes into Porter
It
County.
goes into Porter County, doesn't
The
it?
quarter before it goes to the river.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would it be
It's got a
easier?
lot of southwest, a lot of that before it dumps into the Kankakee.
And there's actually a large amount of fall from the town of La Crosse down 2 miles to our property. There's a large amount. I believe I've heard it's like 10 to 12 feet amount of fall from La Crosse, the town.
To the river.
No, just to our property, 2 miles
Okay.
south. So, I mean, it comes quick.
Right.
So,
Would it be easier for you to relay what you wanted the state to look at in an email to me, and then I can send that to the guy at the state? Is that gonna be easier to do it that way
I'll email you something.
than
The
to try
culvert's
to
not big
sit here
enough.
and figure it out? You know what I
We
mean?
have pictures.
You wanna do that?
Somebody needs to give the state the recommendations of
Yeah.
the culvert size for the watershed. And I felt like these other things we're approving today was telling them that's enough to handle that watershed.
Yeah, because whatever
It's definitely
issues,
the surveyor's job to know what size pipe they need to put under the road.
right. I'm just thinking whatever issues you are having with the pipes under 421, email that to me. And
Sure.
that way I have a
And-
clear picture of what
Sure, and
you're
I'll ask-
after. And then when I get with the I'll just forward that to our
It's a
NDOT.
concrete structure.
That way
isn't it?
we're
It's a
not all
concrete
confused.
structure. I'll ask other farmers that are in the same watershed to put their
Yeah.
names to it, and we'll give you something.
What
Yeah,
size is
let's
that
do that,
structure
and
now?
then,
You know what? I think it's, it's not, I should have brought those pictures. It's like maybe a 4x4 square.
So we did some work on a culvert on your arm a couple years ago. We took out a tank car,
Yep, yep.
and that was 8 feet, wasn't it?
I think that's,
I don't
But it
remember.
had a hole in it to put boards in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
so we'll do that.
But there's times when it's, at least this much difference. We've got a laser, just check it, and it was that much different.
Got some pictures, make sure you
I got
put
some
the
pictures
pictures
of
in.
them. I got some pictures of something going down in the whirlpool.
That was before the flood peaked.
I'm pretty sure about that.
So I will. I'll try to get some pictures too.
Yeah, that way we kind of have it in black and white, what we're
Yep.
thinking about here, and then we can get that to the.
That
NDOT.
picture's gotta sell, that's gotta tell
That's what I tell you, sir.
everything.
Yeah. Yeah. So, thank you for your consideration.
Thanks. So do we want to give any kind of preliminary approval or anything with this, or is it stuff from state?
Yeah, I'm fine with giving them approval to do those work on their culverts with the sizes they presented with their study, knowing that they're going to give us the plans when it comes to bidding, and they're going to give us the as-built plans too.
So the plans, when it comes to bidding,
Yeah, they'll
go
set,
through
yeah,
us?
no, they'll give us a copy of the plans to make sure it still matches this.
All right. So we don't need any motion or nothing on that, we're just passing
No,
it on.
you need to give them a motion to work inside our easement.
I'll make the motion to give them the right to work in the easement.
We've got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. That's it on that drain crossing. So Brad Adamski, our attorney's report, please.
Just a couple of quick reports that'll dovetail into public comment, so probably the bulk of the conversation will happen in public comment. On the Schurz ditch, the board had asked for a reach out to the state to get some information on them. Mike Brown reached out to IDEM, who directed him back to DNR, got some information from DNR that he'll be willing to share with the board. Whether that's sufficient enough or whether you still want somebody to appear here, again, I think should be addressed in public comment. I know the original idea was that somebody either from the state or some state entity would be here to answer questions of the board too, not just provide information. So that's just give you an update on where that is. Rick's here if you want to ask Rick further about it.
From the state, we're talking about,
We're talking about the capping of the wells, and right as they were finishing the dewatering process and the dewatering
so this state person is from,
IDEM or DNR.
IDEM or DNR. IDEM was who we were originally reaching out to. The director was not available, or his schedule did not make him available, so he directed, and I'm putting words in Rick's mouth, but he directed Rick to DNR. Rick talked with somebody at DNR who provided him the, I guess, whatever inspection reports. But Rick's here if you want to ask him too. I mean, but again,
I
this is...
feel like asking the board right now if there's any time we want them here when the Schurz ditch is not part of the agenda.
And again, I think obviously Louis here, so I know there's going to be public comment. So maybe we want to hear from him and see what other additional information he's got for the board. And then it'll be appropriate for the board to direct action at that point.
How far would this person need to travel from, Rick?
Good afternoon. I had mentioned when we were talking previous, the term and the name Marty Maupin come up. I do a lot of communications with him off and on. I did call Marty Maupin. That's what I mentioned I would say that I would do to the board. I did call him. He's a little bit familiar with the project up here, but he turned me on to a gentleman from the Department of Natural Resources. Nate is his name. I've dealt with him a few times on some other projects. shoreline project, for one, going in Pine Lake in the future. And Nate had some information for me, but he turned me on to another guy back at IDEM, but in a different division. So I actually have some information. I've not done any reports. I've not done any of that. But what I'd like to suggest is that I offer it up to maybe Mr. Poland, who would be my board president, MS4, or to Tony or somebody, where I could just give it to them, show them what I found, this and that, and then they could report to you if that would be okay. I just said that I would call Marty Maupin and try to get some information from him, and I have done that. So I'm kind of looking for some direction of what you'd want me to do next.
I think we'll give you the direction during our public comment. It would be just as well, I feel, because we're going to feel more passionate about it at that time. But right now, just to share with the rest of the board, I was really expecting that we'd have some report from somebody like IDEM that was telling us how those things have been capped and what was taken care of. They needed a time frame to make us happy. And I don't know if we're going to get that today or not. And he should have been here. Someone should have been here to tell us.
Marty Maupin hardly had 10 minutes to talk to me, actually. I have another little project that I've been waiting 6 months to get permitted from him. He just said he was too busy to come up here and that he could turn me on to the DNR. And he had no idea that the DNR guy was going to give me some information and then turn me on to a different division of IDEM. I have some information I can compile for you, but I would just, I'm looking to see how you would want to and who you would want me to get to.
They're just passing the buck back and forth.
Well, I was just doing what I said I would do, sir. I would contact him, and I did. So I'm just looking for some direction from you.
All right. Well, we'll move the agenda and we'll get back with you before the end of the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
On that.
Thank you.
So is that it for your report, or you got more?
Well, the other item, and again, I'll come up with public comment. I believe Mr. Saida is here. So again, the board had requested that she appear here. We sent a letter to her. She had already met with Commissioner Brzezinski and then with Christie, so she's here anyhow, regardless of the letter.
Public comment?
Yeah.
Well, when we get to public comment, we'll have her speak first. And that'll lighten her load, so she don't have to hang around for the next part.
And then that'll do for attorney reports.
All right. Tony, surveyor reports?
The Kankakee Basin Commission will meet on this Thursday in La Crosse at 9:30, and then there'll be a public comment section for the Kankakee River Basin Commission following that, I believe at noon or 11:30 following the meeting. So anyone who has concerns about the Kankakee Basin Commission and everything going forward can go to that meeting. That's an open public meeting, both the public comment and the meeting. Technical advisory for the Kankakee Basin Commission will probably meet sometime the first week in February, where we will start to discuss some of the things that we are working on, like the Thayer Farm downstream storage, water storage, tree removal, and the technical aspects of what they're actually accomplishing. So we're working really hard to get that moving. If anyone this week, we should see people, we should see Al Alsop on the river. So if anyone calls you or contacts you, we would notify adjacent owners. They should be on site this week. If somebody's out in the river with an excavator, or we're taking down leaning trees, or we're taking down dead trees. And we'll be meeting with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife hopefully sometime this week to discuss the placement of those trees, either for wildlife habitat, or grind them up and leave them for access, or take them off and put them in a pile and burn and bury them. Those are the things U.S. Fish and Wildlife wants to do. They are concerned with obviously the eagles on the river, the bat habitat, and any fish and habitat that we have in the future, let alone the wildlife habitat we might have out there when we're done. That's all I have. We're working really hard in the Kankakee, and it's going to be a slow go, but at least we're seeing some action.
What time is that meeting to start in La Crosse?
9:30 at the La Crosse Community Center, Thursday. Everyone's welcome to attend.
I think it would be a good thing for any of us board members to try to make that meeting. Yes, can you come up to the mic so people at home will get to hear you?
What time is the public allowed to attend that meeting?
The public's allowed during that meeting 9:30. I think there is some public comment, but I think the public meeting, the outreach meeting, I believe is 11:30 or 12. It's right after the meeting.
Okay, because I was text, somebody told me it was 1 o'clock that
Is
the
it 1
public
o'clock?
was.
It might.
So I don't
might
know,
take
because I
some
don't want
lunch.
to, I want to show up on time.
I can forward that email to you,
That'd be awesome.
the times and all that.
That'd be awesome. So,
I'd need that too.
Okay.
And we all might need that, so
We
we
can
know
send
when
that
it
out.
is.
Send it out.
at least so the public knows when to go.
And maybe, since Commissioner Brzezinski's down there, I believe Scott Pilat's going to speak at your meeting tomorrow. So he can cover that on the agenda tomorrow too.
10 o'clock, right
10
here.
o'clock.
10 o'clock here tomorrow, Commissioner meeting.
No, the executive director is going to do an update to the LaPorte County Commissioners.
Yeah.
That's all.
All right, then, any old business? I think this is where I want to move in this project. That's the old business back on the Mockler. And then we can address that floodgate that the state needs to repair, just get it cleaned out, which is like right across from where 2350 meets with 421. And it's a culvert that goes under the old railroad bed. And that old railroad bed is part of the levee system to keep the Kankakee from flooding and going north of that railroad and still staying on the east side of 421. And again, that addresses the repair that needs to be made on the levee south of 2300 on the west side of the Mockler. So, you know, that landowner needs some specifications of how to leave that levee that is along the Mockler ditch. Did I word that all right, guys?
No, it's what
Yes. And I know one of his things where there's no reason for him to fix that until this flapper gate's fixed. Because that lets the water go north.
That whole area is quite unusual. It's not unusual, but there's no bank on the river. You gotta understand, in that area, there's no levee on the river. It's set back about a half to 3/4 of a mile, and this bank that John's talking about with Molecki is part of the containing the river, and this clapgate's part of containing the river.
Yes.
And it's kind of like you gotta pay attention to it when it's dry, because when it's wet, it's too late. You can't do anything about it.
Right. And it's that way because of the old, what do they call that right there? Where the river used to run? Horseshoe Bend.
Horseshoe Bend, Duckville.
I mean, that's why there's no levee
bank on it.
alongside of the Kankakee at that spot. So that Kankakee just floods that side, and all those people are living on the Kankakee side of the levee. Right there. I don't know when the levee actually stops that runs along the river from the east side coming into this. But it seemed to me like when the levee got knocked down in the last flood, which I think was Stark County, they took the levee down to relieve the flood. That let the river grow to the south, and then that's when it breached this levee system. And Jim, I'd just love you to say that's what you agree with, and that's why that water came from the south back to your barns. So we've beat that dead horse long enough, we know what to do there now?
Yep.
Any other old business anybody wants to throw in here?
Me?
I'm not sure yet. Is it public comment or old business for Louis?
Let's keep old business. Old business to be brought up by the board. Public comment can be brought up.
All right, not yet then. Claims then. Or is there any other new business by the board? Maybe what you and I were just talking about there was new business and not old business.
Well, if the ditch is as old as they are, it's all old business technically.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All right, any claims?
No claims.
All right, joint board reports.
None other than I just gave.
All right, MS4 reports. Mike?
I'll yield my reports so we can handle the people that are waiting.
All right, and public comment. Let's have the man come up and say your name and where you're from and what you want to talk about.
Alina Yersaida. I own a property at 4 South Westfield in LaPorte. I received a letter from Mr. Adamski saying that the board requested that debris from the previously existing shed be removed and any dumpster or other debris. I've since filed for a variance on a Connex, or otherwise known as a storage container, on the building. We've had several things come up stolen from our property, anywhere from bandsaws to other pieces of equipment, and we got the storage container because we're rehabbing that property to keep our stuff safe. My husband and I were bouncing it back and forth on whether or not we wanted to ask to put the storage container where the shed is. The shed was refurbished and then it was damaged, and so it sits with holes in the roof of the shed. We have boards on top to prevent water damage coming inside as best we can, but we'd like to tear it down and put the storage container where the shed is, side it, and put a faux roof on it to make it look like a storage shed and anchor it in. And since the shed was there before the ditch, that's kind of what we were thinking we would ask the board if we could do. It sits on the easement. The property was cleaned about 1.5 years ago or so, and there was no issues. The ditch, the Rodman ditch, also known as the Breckenridge ditch, was cleaned, and there was no issues accessing any of that from either side, from my neighbor's yard and our yard. So that's what I'm here for today.
You guys, somebody's been on the site to see what's out there?
Yeah, I gotta disagree. We got a septic field that is at the neighbor's house preventing access on the one side, and there were problems accessing her side in which a contractor damaged the shed, and there was a litigation and a settlement.
He hired another contractor to do the work illegally, and that was the issue. The cleanup on the ditch was accessed on both sides, and the trucks came on the property free range and didn't have an issue cleaning that ditch.
Are you the only one of our staff that's been out to see this?
There is several of us that can speak of it, and
I have a picture of the property.
All of us may have our own opinion, but my opinion is that when you have structures in the easement, it creates potential for problems. There was a structure in this easement and there was a potential problem, and now we're revisiting this situation right here, right now. Maybe we can get the opinion of the other technical advisors to the board.
When we cleaned the Rodman Breckenridge, who was the contractor on that? Was that Alsop?
No.
No. How far away is this?
It was Mr. Howells.
From the ditch?
Yeah, I guess that's my question. Is there any reason it can't be 75 feet from the ditch?
The way that the property is set up and the way that I have to put the septic tanks in, yes, it would be a problem. Anywhere that we put the storage container would potentially, in the backyard behind the house, be sitting on the 75 foot of easement.
If I remember the emails correctly, the shed is not older than the ditch.
I went to the assessor's office. They've been paying taxes on that shed. This one right here that we refurbished since 1900. The ditch went in 1929.
I don't know that the assessor's office would have records showing that the taxes have been paid since 1900. I know Beacon shows a date of 1900, but that's kind of like a default date. So I'd want to have clarification of that from the assessor's office.
Yeah, that's
It's
fine.
also in court records.
Is that the only picture you got?
This is I brought in the older picture to show that we had refurbished the shed and that it was sitting there in the easement.
I guess you'd leave it up to your attorney Adamski to recall the events of the cleaning, because the shed got damaged due to some tree falling on it. And I believe there was, I don't think this board was in the final agreement, but there was compensation and agreement, right?
The board was involved in the sense that we withheld payment to the contractor.
Yes.
Based on the dispute, and we made sure that payment wasn't released until that dispute was resolved with the property owners, and that was about damage to the shed. It wasn't about somebody coming on the property illegally.
I made a police report of Enos, which was hired through Howells, and he did not have any paperwork with the board to do any work on the property. He was removed by a police officer.
The lawsuit and all settlement paperwork I saw had nothing to do with that claim. It was about the damage to the structure.
He's the one that damaged the structure.
If there was not a structure in the easement, none of that would have happened.
Yeah, that was my point. If there wasn't a structure, it wouldn't have been damaged.
So we just granted somebody to put structures up 27 feet away from the top of the bank. How far is this structure that we're talking about away from the top of the bank?
That was a real good one.
We have a removable storage container that we can put anywhere, and so our thought process was that if I could give you this picture. Oh, you have one? Our thought process was...
Bring yours out.
Make sure
I don't think we've got your picture. And I'm guessing your picture's before they cleaned the old trees off.
There's the ditch.
The whole thing's gonna be, if you let trees grow up back there, you're gonna be back having the same mess.
Right, we've cleaned everything except for the inside of the ditch. We cleaned all of the outside of the ditch again after the cleanup. So we've maintained the top of the bank on up towards the house. And so our thought process is that we would put the storage container in front of the shed and tear the shed down. So that way there would be no shed sitting on the ditch line itself.
How far is that shed from your chain link fence?
It's right. We bought the house like that. The chain link fence was on either side of the shed. We'd like to bring all of that forward probably about 15-20 feet.
Well, your fence needs to be 75 feet off the easement too, to be
Yes,
right.
we have started taking that fence down, and with the storage container, we would like to move the storage container, like I said, in front of the ditch, so that way it's not sitting on the bank, and have the fence line butting up against each side of the storage container.
Well, what I'm looking at, you couldn't take a lawnmower between this shed and the ditch. We need to
Correct.
get a backhoe at minimum. I'm not saying we gotta have the whole 75 feet.
Right.
We have to have.
Right, I have pictures of the big machinery that was out there when they were doing the work on the ditch, and it fit just fine. They had no issues. I would like
I don't
to take.
agree. There was a lot of issues at this site. There was a lot of issues at this site
It broke down the
involving
fence, it
this
broke
board,
down the
involving the
barn.
contractor, involving litigation, involving our project manager that had to babysit out there every single day for a week or more while this was going on. There were lots of problems. It was not a
Like
smooth...
I said, the only problem was that the contractor hired someone who was not supposed to be on the
If
property
there was
doing
not a
work.
structure in the easement, none of this would have happened. And the property adjacent from her property, there's a septic field that is in our easement.
The
We have
house
no
on the other
access
property is on
that
the
is
easement.
safe or without risk of damage.
Yeah, the opposite side, there's a septic field and half of a house in the easement.
On the
So
opposite side of the ditch?
there is no way I can get equipment on that other side.
I'd
There's
also,
actually no way I can get equipment on either sides of this ditch at all, because between your shed and the neighbor and the septic in the house, I can't get anything.
well, the shed would
And
be
that's why we had
removed.
problems the last time we did this project. And you guys, there was a different board here. Brad was here, Mike was here.
I think I
dealt with
was
it every
there.
day. Tony was here. I can't get anything
I think I
there to
was
clean
there.
that ditch. We had to go on your private property to get behind to the south side of your shed.
Which I gave permission.
But I do not like, and I think Brad will agree with me, having people allow us to go across private property, not staying in the easement, because you have a whole nother mess of problems going across private property. I don't like to do that.
That's the point
The
of
way it
having the
stands right
easement.
now, we cannot get equipment out there at all, period.
Unless we call it cross private property.
Unless we cross private property, which is what we had to do, and I don't like doing that.
My recommendation to this board is to not allow any structures in this easement at this location. However, if you are so inclined to do so, I would recommend that you leave us as much room as possible, along with a hold harmless agreement to be signed, that if we have a repeat situation where a contractor damages a structure or property that's in the easement, that it protects liability, regardless on whether they do it themselves or hire a sub, or this is about a structure in the easement. That's my comments.
May I ask how many times the Breckenridge ditch has been cleaned?
We clean
You can ask. I know I don't have the answer.
Your section wasn't clean for a long time. We came in and took the trees out at you and the neighbor's request. But there was no silt removal because they didn't feel like it needed it. We spent $50,000 taking out trees in a 500-foot stretch.
It was
between you
39.
and the neighbor just to take trees out. And we didn't even clean the ditch because it didn't seem like that it needed it, because you're at the headwaters and there's no water in that ditch at all. Downstream from there, where the Rodman, the main part and all the arms, because that's probably our biggest watershed in the county, and it starts at 4 behind Parker's and runs all the way to the river through KOP. That's our biggest ditch. It's miles and miles and arms and arms and arms. That particular arm that comes behind your ground, the first time that I've been here in 30 years that we've cleaned that little stretch, that was maybe a couple thousand feet, was the 500 feet between you and your neighbor, and all we did was a tree removal, and it was $50,000.
It was 39.5, 39 and a half.
Yeah, it's all assessed, the watershed's assessed. So that was, and the last time we did bank spraying last year on most of the Rodman, and last time we cleaned the ditch, it's probably been a couple years, I can look if you need to know all the details, I have all that in the office. We cleaned silt removal out of arms and main parts periodically through the years, since we've assessed that for probably the last 20 years. But we did bank spraying last year. That answers your question. How often do we maintain it? Pretty regularly, because we have money in there. So we probably keep up on that one better than most of the other ones.
Now that the trees are gone, we need to be able to go through there with a spray truck and spray them.
Yeah, so we sprayed it last year. I'm gonna get that list ready again for this year. So we can hit it again.
The trees that she's referring to were cottonwoods, and I found no information that there has been any work done on the ditch, neither has my neighbor. And if you look down the ditch line, there are still tons of cottonwood trees, huge cottonwood trees, and all of my neighbors have things sitting in the easement along that ditch line. including a horse fence, buildings. The only part of that ditch that's cleaned right now is in front of the property. The property that I bought was owned by a hoarder, and they dumped everything in the ditch, which made me come to the drainage board meeting to ask that the ditch line be cleaned.
If this ditch was all plugged up and it didn't belong as a public thing, what would it flood upstream from this area?
Just north of those tracks, just that little parcel north of that. It's the headwaters. The only thing it serves north of her property is like a little parcel. I'll just show you.
What does it take for a group of people to get together and ask to get off the assessment so they're not assessed?
$50,000 for 500 feet.
And for it not to be
It actually was
a public
39.
drain? Couldn't
It was
that
actually
be
39.
something they,
Yeah, 39.50, whatever, close enough. Why would you want to take somebody out of the assessment? I guess is what I'm asking.
well, we're at the very top of the watershed,
Yeah, but if
and it
you,
would be none of our concern if it was not a public. We
I
could
don't.
be back to private right in that area.
I guess I go on the record here. If you're asking for a very, you're making a very dangerous statement here. The people, and we get this all the time. This board, and Christy's seen this more than I've seen this as a
Well,
kid.
I don't know that I've heard. so I
If you're going to try to make the argument here that the people on the top of the hill shouldn't pay, those are the headwaters, and so they're paying and keeping their ditch clean because they're pushing all their water downstream on somebody else. If they're not going to pay, you're kind of making the argument to push that payment down to the people who are at the bottom of the hill.
And the water's still coming.
And the water's still coming from the top of the hill, so I don't think you want to make that argument in any public meeting that the people at the top of the hill shouldn't pay, because every person comes to this board and says, I'm at the top of the hill, why am I paying? Don't make that argument.
Right, that water is...
It's coming down, it's coming from the top of the hill. And the people at the bottom hill have to take it no matter they like it or not. If you're going to negate those people at the top of the hill from paying, that's very dangerous.
I know we've got places in the middle of one where we lose our access. You know, we've got it above an area and we got it below an area.
And that's the same argument. If you're thinking about the access doesn't matter at the top of the hill, it matters quite a lot because the top of the hill conveys it all the way through the system. Now, a lot of people don't see the people at the bottom of the hill see it all the time, but the people at the top of the hill only might see the flow through, and they don't realize what's happening at the outlet and the effect they're having on that. So that's why you do your best on all parts of the dish to keep it clean and accessible.
Okay, we're talking about a Connex container right here.
yeah, we have to get that cost.
You're gonna take the fence out? You said you're taking...
Yes, sir, I'd like to take the fence out and put the Connex building, the storage container, in between the fire pit that I have there and the shed. I would like to tear down the shed and remove the shed. I'm not sure about the concrete because the concrete is so thick on that. I didn't put it there, it's been there forever, but we're improving the property, and in order to do that, the Connex building serves as our storage.
You just need to answer the one really simple question. How far away from the top of the bank would this Connex building be?
It would be about approximately 40 to 50 feet from the top of the ditch.
I think we could compromise. The way it was, we couldn't even get a machine there. She's moving that out.
Well, I feel that their fence has to stay 75 feet away. The Connex building is a portable structure. You mentioned about putting another roof on top of it to make it look like a shed.
Yes, sir. We talked with the inspector's office to file our variance. We go for that meeting on the 22nd, and he said for us to keep it on the property, it has to be anchored in, and we had to send out letters to our neighbors and even the train station to let them know that, you know, what we were doing. And so
your neighbors all need to know that it's illegal to be putting something on top of the 75-foot easement.
Unless there's a whole harmless sign. and we grant permission, like we just did earlier in this meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I guess from the technical side, and I understand Hugh's argument here, is it possible to have her bring in a copy of her site plan of the house, the septic,
I have
the easement, and how many feet away from the top of bank it is, so you can see if you're going to get 40 or 50 or 60 feet?
Instead of this close to stuff, we want an exact.
Yeah, we want it.
plan.
This is a serious location that we've already had damage.
Severe handicap.
Well, we're looking for a plot plan of scale so that somebody's located where the top of
I
bank
actually
is.
have a surveyor coming out to do it. Thate Surveying is
perfect,
coming out
perfect.
to survey the land, and he'll give you the
So
exact measurements of where
if you
we're
could bring
at.
that back the next month, you'd know.
That's what I think we should ask for today. We'll put you on the agenda for next month. And then you can tell us exactly how far off the top of the ditch bank you're gonna put this building, or that you're proposing to put the building.
In the meantime, she'll be going to the BZA, right?
Yes, sir.
Good.
The BZA can hear her appeal for the variance, and they can even grant it contingent on getting your permission to put the structure there. So that doesn't prevent her from going forward with the BZA. I know they probably told her to come to you first so that she could at least report when she's requesting that variance. But if you say that the board has asked for specific information on the location of it, they can still go forward. I mean, granting you the variance, you got to get permission by both boards, ultimately. But we're not trying to hold you up from going before the BZA.
All right, that sound good?
Yes, sir. What would I do if I have a conflict of interest with someone that sits on your board?
If
The person on the board would have the conflict, right?
Right, and if a board member has property in the area, then that could lead to a potential conflict, and they should recuse themselves from any voting motion, potentially any discussion. But if it's, I mean, without knowing further what the alleged conflict is,
I don't want to say it this time, but I feel
You can voice it to Christie like after the meeting. If that's all right with you.
yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Okay, we're still in the public comment. One of you two want to go first? In the back, come on up. Your hand went up first.
My name's Chris Throgmorton.
Come up to the microphone and do that so then everyone can hear you. That's
My name is Chris Throgmorton. I live at 1607 J Street, and I would like to know what the difference is between his 27 feet and her 30 to 40 feet, or 40 to 50 feet, when she just said there's no difference between $39,000 and $50,000. So I'd like to know essentially what happened to that other
I can tell you what the difference is.
$11,000 for
His
one.
27 feet is a well-maintained bank with no trees on it, and he's willing to take the spoils. This other $50,000 deal, the cottonwood tree's this big, nobody's maintained it, and you gotta have room
All right.
to work with a machine.
My next question would be, let's say she didn't have a shed and they hired somebody who wasn't licensed, and then what? Because it seems like he just got caught, and the shed's what got him caught. But it doesn't really seem like there was much difference. Seems like you guys are arguing a lot of trivial stuff to just deny people for stupid reasons. It's kind of stupid. Anyway,
we appreciate your
comment today.
Well,
have a good one. I don't really care what your opinion is or your response. So.
thank you, sir.
They're the same. You know, they're both normal people, citizens.
No, there's $50,000 difference between them.
I believe she clarified that it was 40 or 39.5 several
Thank you for
times.
your- thank
so
you.
since you guys have apparently lost $11,000, you can consider this a public records request in accordance with the Access to Public Records Act, Mr.
What
Adams.
that is.
For wherever that lost $11,000 seems to be, and why you guys are having so much trouble keeping accurate financial records.
you can make the request in writing. Thank you.
Glad. See you tomorrow.
Okay, one of you guys.
I know the next week.
You got something?
Well, I guess.
You can go first.
All righty.
Wow.
My name's Tom Persky. I live out on Highway 20. I don't know if you guys can do any good. I live next to a brother-in-law, and he lives on my dad's property, and on this property was a drain that drained a marsh along the highway. And when I dug my pond, I pumped the water over onto my sister's because she said it was okay to do that, and the drain worked fine. So my brother-in-law decided to put a pond on his side, so he had it dug out, and he stopped the drain. Now the water is backed up into my property. I don't know if it's legal for him to shut that drain off. It's really made a mess out of my area.
Have you guys talked with him yet? Is it on a public?
I gotta be honest, it wasn't Lindsay and I were talking.
All right. Do you know what the local drain is that drains the property? What the name of the closest watershed is to your problem?
Well, it is the Lake Michigan watershed. Everything north of the toll road goes to Lake Michigan. And there was some signs up there on the highway about Lake Michigan watershed area. I don't know whether the sign, somebody hit it or knocked it down, but this water all comes from Rangewood through my property, and it goes underneath the highway and back underneath the highway and into the Glen River and goes into Lake Michigan.
Well, we gotta know if it's a public.
Huh?
We gotta know if it's a public drain or a private drain. And
it's a private drain, yeah.
We're only in charge of public drains.
So you can't do nothing about it.
We can pass the information along to whoever needs it to help you out or point you in a different direction. It's like we need to know more details yet.
Well, I don't have any pictures like the rest of these people do, but I can take you some, make you some if you want something.
Anybody that where your water's supposed to drain to, if they don't let your water drain, they're being illegal.
Is it legal?
Somebody downstream can't make you flood.
Oh, well, that's exactly what's happening, yeah. Yeah. He stopped the drain so the water's backed up into my area.
The problem is if it's not a regulated drain, there may not be much that this board can do to help you. You may have a private cause of action.
A what?
A private cause of action, litigation. But you might be able to provide information to Christine. If you say you've got pictures of the property, she can relay it to me and we can give you a referral, but I don't know that this board has authority to assist you with your problem.
Yeah, we need to know that first. So we need to know like where exactly this problem is and go from there.
Well, you have on the sign-in sheet your address is 0057 West US 20.
Right.
Okay. But you mentioned Rangewood.
Pardon?
I said you mentioned Rangewood. I know that's not an urban drain.
That's a subdivision. It's just a little east of me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I live right on the corner of Range Road.
Range Road.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just off the top of my head gonna say, but what township are you in?
Springfield. It's right on the corner.
Galena.
I can go out with the rest of where it's at.
There you go. You have a volunteer.
Steve said he knows where it's
I
at.
know his location. I can take Christie out there.
I'm thinking just off the top of my head, I don't think there's anything regulated there.
Are you in immediate danger, like it flooding your house or your septic's not working right or anything like
Well,
that?
it's getting pretty close to the drainage field that I put in.
It's getting pretty startling now.
Yeah, it's where I used to mow. You can't even walk. It's just nothing but mud now. I mean, this is naturally a wet year, but we never had any problem before.
You guys used to be able to talk to each other, and now you probably aren't talking too well.
Well, how do you know that?
That's why you're here.
Okay, exactly right.
Yeah.
I don't know. The contractor that was John Small, dug the pond in, and he used the drain when he had pumps running there when he dug the pond for my sister and her husband. And when he got done, I asked my brother-in-law, "So you going to put the drain back?" And he said, "No." I said, well, why not? He said, I just don't want to.
Is it flooding himself too?
Pardon?
Is it flooding himself too?
Yeah, he's got water standing in his yard now, which would probably eliminate that too. Yeah.
And he's just tickled with that because he's got.
Well, that's a pretty simple thing if you really think about it, but there's a couple other words I probably shouldn't use here.
Well, I feel like I like being on this board because I like helping people with problems.
Yeah.
And right now,
I don't know. I guess the next step is go get a lawyer.
well, I'd give her a minute or two to
Pardon?
let her have a little time here to get her bearings on where your problem is.
Yeah, it's right on the corner, Highway 20 and Range Road.
Yeah.
North or south? The north, I think it's the north side.
Pardon?
North side?
Oh, yeah.
I'm on the north,
Yeah, yeah.
northwest corner, yeah.
Yeah, that's not regulated.
So where do we tell him to go from here?
Okay, if there's something that can be done within the right-of-way, then the county highway would have jurisdiction. If this is a drain that is utilized by more than two property owners, then it would be under the Indiana law of a mutual drain. And if they're in a mutual drain, I'll let Brad take over from that.
Again, in a mutual drain, it goes back to what Chairman Coulter was saying as far as you can't negatively impact the other's use of it, and even if you're repairing or replacing it, that cost should be shared by everybody using that mutual drain. I'm not saying that's the case here, but that may very well be what it is. But yeah, ultimately, if you want to still talk with Christine and she can give you whatever background information from the board's perspective, but yeah, I think you are going to need to get your own legal counsel or get your own attorney so that you can pursue your individual private rights on this. But the board,
I
the
always
board wants
thought
to
it was
help.
against the law to push water back on another person's property.
We're not saying it's not. We're just saying this board can't help you with that.
We have to follow regulated drains. We, you know, like the white ditch or, that's the only place we have jurisdiction.
Yeah, I know, I understand that, yeah.
If that drain's put back in, is it gonna goof up his new pond he put in? Is it gonna drain most of it?
Yeah, it wouldn't take it all down, but I mean, it would take it a certain level, yeah.
He should have known that when he built the pond, that at the level of that drain, that's all the higher it's gonna be, because that drain drains everything else away.
Yeah, it's a very simple operation. Just probably wouldn't take 30, 40 feet of pipe that they ripped out when they dug the pond to put it back. Part of the drain is still there.
Did all the spoils from his pond get hauled away?
Pardon?
Did all the spoils from his pond get hauled away?
Yeah.
So it's just a hole with no bank on it.
No.
I don't know what else we can tell you right now.
Yeah, all right, well, thanks anyway. Yeah.
Louis, it's your turn. I'm assuming that.
Louis Spear, 6434 South Third Line Road. This has to do with the Shears Ditch east of town. I have some two samples of the gravels that were used to backfill the borings on the when they put in the drainage pipe on Boyd Boulevard. And these were taken from the piles that was behind the floor store south of Walmart. They backed triaxles in there and dumped washed gravel in one pile. And then the other sample is just like a pit run gravel that they used on top. I'll give you these to look at.
While he's away from the microphone, do any of you guys know from last meeting, did we tell someone from IDEM or DNR that we wanted the proof of the cappings of those wells and we wanted them right away? Or the meeting before?
It was at the December meeting, and it was to make a request that somebody from them, from IDEM or from DNR, whoever was responsible for overseeing that capping process, provide information to us or appear to discuss the proper capping. Because we were unclear, listening to Mr. Spear and listening to reports from the county or from the city as far as what actions were taken to cap those wells.
Difference in what they each said, how many
and what he said he saw.
wells there were.
Right.
And with what he's brought here, you know, they made it so it's a drain so the water can run right back down in there.
Yep.
But that's why we need to get to the bottom of this right away. And somebody needs to tell us how they've capped those wells. We were even ready for a special meeting if we had to. Remember that?
Yeah.
And that was if we heard something we didn't like.
Right. I allowed the initial communication through Rick since he knew Marty or Mr. Maupin. If the board wants me to be more aggressive and demand that he appear at the February meeting, we can do that. If you want to schedule a special meeting for those purposes, we can arrange around his schedule. I understand that sometimes it can be difficult to be here on a Tuesday afternoon for somebody from Indianapolis. But I agree. I mean, the board wants to hear answers, and Mr. Spear deserves to hear answers.
To stop me if I'm wrong here, but I think our lawyer needs to send a letter to whoever was supposed to have capped these wells and tell them we want something by letter, mail, email, whatever, as soon as possible to explain what they did to those wells.
And the only thing I would say to that is I don't know what Rick's got already, what Rick got from DNR, and he's offered to turn that over to the board, but also to Mike and to Tony to review. So we may have some of that information already, but certainly.
Well, before we leave here today, I want a board to vote on something that gets action before the next meeting, so we know when this guy does show up at the next meeting where we're at with the capping of these wells.
When I looked at the Howmet site and they capped those wells, there was documentation. The person who capped them, the material that they used, the depth of the well, the time, the date, the location. And my understanding is the state is supposed to require that as a matter of public record when a well is capped. That's all we're asking for. I think we don't necessarily have to have a DNR person here, but there should be a report filed with the state who did it and how they did it.
And if they didn't do it, it's got to get done, right?
If you sign your name that you capped the well, that's pretty good documentation, but we haven't seen anybody say they capped them. I mean, we haven't seen it. We requested information that it was put in record that it was capped or not. I mean, show us proof. That's all we're asking. The statute says they're supposed to have reports whenever they cap a well.
I would just simply say that request will go to three parties. My recommendation should go to the city of LaPorte, should go to the contractor they use, and should go to the state, to IDEM. So all three entities should get the request for those reports, public records request. Well, the contractor would potentially fall under the city, but yes, if that's the board's direction, that would be my advice, to go for all three entities.
I'm sure sorry it's taken this long to get to saying that's our direction. To me, when Louis first mentioned that, you know, if there was a semi-truck that got in a crash and poked his fuel tank, and where's that going to go? It's going to go right down to the aquifer. At that point, when he told us that, I'm sure us as a board assumed that somebody over here to our left was going to make sure that those agencies were notified that we wanted proof of the capping of the wells. Didn't you guys all feel that was done then?
Louis is out there every day. Louis told us how much material it would take to properly cap them. That didn't happen. That's not even the discussion. We know it didn't happen. You'd have seen semi-loads of that material coming in to cap it with. So it didn't happen. Jim Roy owns the floor store. He's out there every day. He couldn't even open the store because they had his driveway blocked off. And he said he watched them too. He said, I'll tell you, they did not cap the wells. And in the meantime, last week, according to Mecklenburg, no, whatever the guy is there now, it said we had a month and a half of rain in 36 hours. Where's all that going? We're going to screw up the aquifer, and it'll be screwed up forever.
It's washed off parking lots and everything. And
sure did. Sure did.
And we were asking for this information, I don't know, to say 3 months ago.
I don't know if we need a court order, if we need a subpoena, we need something. We need them guys to come here and
we don't need to wait till next meeting.
No, we can have it tomorrow. It'll be fine with me. They need to atone for what they've done. I understand too that when the contractor left, it was ugly. They wanted to upcharge on the city, and the city said no. And they had offered to pay for the lost business and for paying his employees when they couldn't open the floor store for days. And they finally, in the end, they said, we changed our mind. We're not doing that either. They left on bad terms. And what is the city of LaPorte doing to rectify anything? That ain't helping us at all. They let them run roughshod over us.
So I'm just frustrated on this. I'm sorry for that. I just feel like somebody dropped the ball here, and us as our appointed people on this board, we assume that someone was taking care of it.
At this point, I'll personally see that those records requests go out, if not this afternoon, first thing tomorrow.
Thank you very much. And let us know, us board members, let us know what response you get.
Simultaneously with that, I'll ask that Rick turn over the reports that he did get from his connection, if he hasn't already, to Mike and to Tony, and then we'll circulate those.
Yeah, we did receive some of that, and I did email that out to the board, and some of that included paperwork about capping the wells and pictures of the materials that were used. But I think the board is wanting more than that. Such as someone to appear here in person.
Well, we need to put it in front of us and see the papers that show it.
Right.
If you got papers, that would help. That's a starting point. I mean, that's an urgency, and we've got to really back up that the city of LaPorte did show some interest of taking over our role as the county drainage board. They would take that, so that was on their hands. And they haven't showed us any interest of that yet. And the uglier this gets of these drains, these not being capped, the more it looks like we're not doing our job.
You not only got
want them to take over something they can't control.
You not only got the capping of the wells issue, we don't know if you're dragging some of that contaminated stuff out from the factory there. We don't know if it's getting down to the aquifer. We don't know if it's getting down to the little Kankakee or where it's going when it gets down Shear's Ditch. There's a whole lot of stuff down here that's in jeopardy, and nobody wants to talk about it. I think it's not a case of them coming here and proving that they did it. I think it's come here and we'll prove that they didn't and find out what we're going to do about it. We had another love canal here, for God's sakes. You're probably too young to know about that. Me and Louie know.
Well, I do know that there's an area aquifer. It's got, like, in this part of the state has a clay layer on it, 3 or 4 feet of clay, and that's where the water runs off, and it keeps the contaminants from going down. When you open it up, we have nothing but sand and gravel all the way down underneath that clay cap. Well, that clay cap's been broken. Not good.
Oh, this is a mess. Sorry we interrupted you there.
Yeah, I'd like to just explain the two samples there. The larger stones, which are roughly 1 inch and under of washed gravel. The whole procedure started with a 24-inch auger bore. They bored the 24-inch hole down 40 feet. They inserted a 40-foot casing that has a 20-foot perforations on the bottom to receive the water, and then within the 12-inch casing they put a pump that, you know, discharged 200 gallons per minute. And when they put the casing in the center of the empty 24-inch borehole, they took the loaders, went down and picked up the large 1-inch and under washed gravel and filled in the bottom roughly 20 to 25 feet above the perforations to keep out sediments into the, you know, going into the electric pumps. On top, they put in not washed gravel, it's just a pit run gravel, which I have the pile. These are samples taken from the pile south of Walmart behind the floor store, you know, just to the south there. That's where I took the samples from. This is where they delivered the material there, and that's where they took it by bucketfuls to each one of the wells. And all of that, you know, those samples it's gravel. And if you could look at the wall, these panels are 4 feet wide, roughly. 8 feet from the first, you know, going to the second panel is where the first, where the bored hole is off of the edge of the pavement. When you go down 40 feet below, right at 23 feet, you're going to have the clay barrier that separates the upper aquifer from the lower aquifer. I hand pounded, you know, 1.5-inch well, and that's consistent with people that I know that have drilled their own wells. That's the area. Once you get through that at 23 to 25 feet, you're in the lower aquifer. If you can imagine, at 40 feet, there may be a short strata, you know, real thin strata of a little bit of clay, but it's sand on top of sand on top of sand. If you have this gravel 8 feet away from this, where they excavated to put in the pipe, they're putting in all of this pit run gravel. Any of the contaminants that go into that goes right down to the bottom aquifer, running across. It's in the aquifer immediately. I talked to a well driller at great length about what is going on out there, and because he asked me, you know, why, you know, what the heck is going on, and you know, I've known the guy for many years, and I explained the whole situation just like I explained to you. And I said, you've punched wells your whole life. What would it take to properly, how would you properly cap those wells? And his answer was, number one, the 24-inch borehole that they used, and they only put a 12-inch casing in, it should only have been 1 to 2 inches larger than the borehole. You don't introduce this much gravel, you know, 24 inches. You pull once you pull the casing out, it's all solid stone all the way up. And he said the only way that they can possibly do that, to have done it right, if they're going to use a 12-inch casing, because they had to use that larger pump, the boring should have been no more than 14 inches with the grout pipe inserted into the ground with the casing. When they pulled the casing, as they pulled the casing, it would be, you use a concrete slurry which would fill all of the voids, displace the water, and fill all the voids of that, you know. As they pull it, they're under pressure, they're putting in grout all the way up, and that's the only way that you can do that. And all I can say right here is the numbers that I used last week were not necessarily correct, because I can't give you the exact numbers, because every time I was out there, you should have asked the guy the project manager, if he should have been able to answer that question. But he spent his whole time calling the city police every time I had my camera out there. He was more concerned about me taking pictures than doing his job. The numbers of wells, I don't know, but it's closer to 80 than what Jerry Jackson said, whatever number that he said. But every one of them, none of them have been plugged. And that's what I have today.
Should this stuff be also a concern of the health department? Who keeps the records on the wells being put in and the records of them being capped?
IDEM, since they're not drinking wells.
Right, it's a state.
They're not drinking wells, so IDEM, the controlling authority.
Shouldn't we have some kind of documentation from, say, the guy that was taking photos of him or calling the cops on him? Somebody needs to be documenting each one of those wells that went in.
We did receive documentation in which I emailed to all of the board members.
Why does it need to come to the drainage board? Why shouldn't that have been someone else that overseen that?
That should have been overseen by IDEM, I believe, as the jurisdictional
I feel like this is something this shouldn't have even come to the drainage board.
No, it's all spinning, remember, from the original discharge into the Schurz ditch. I mean, that's what brought the project to this board's attention. But you're right, and that's why this has turned into, okay, we need to have the proper state agencies that are supposed to be overseeing this, verifying that they're overseeing it. Because right now we're hearing one side of the story, and admittedly, that side of the story is awful. We're not getting the answers we wanted from the city or from their contractor. They both come in. That's why I said the three-pronged request, the city of LaPorte, the contractor, and IDEM. If there are reports, IDEM is the oversight agency. Where are those reports?
Actually, the DNR is also involved, because they're the ones that should be doing the monitoring of, like I was doing out there, or I was attempting to do. But all of that should have been done.
The DNR would be kind of policing IDEM?
Correct. But it all goes back to when they started this project by Indiana law, that there should be a meeting prior to this project ever starting, where the DNR is there, IDEM is represented, every landowner is represented and notified in writing that's affected out there. They have a meeting prior to this, before they even broke ground. They rammed this down everyone's throats. I mean, this is a joke. And I went to the health department here in the county, to see where, if they had done any, if they made any
registering.
Did they do anything? And nope, I haven't heard a word. And
you guys got any comments you could help share here? Because I want to say something else, but I'd rather hear it come from you guys.
I think we ought to have a special meeting and have them here and have them meet with us board members.
Because I want to say I've said something wrong I want to take back. I don't want to notify them. I want to call a meeting as soon as possible so they don't have a time to make up some documents. You give them a week or so, they can make something, say whatever they want it to say. If we just have them come in and we start asking questions, they need to show us right then. Bring your records and come to this meeting pronto. It shouldn't have came to our level, this whole thing. Well, it's really taken all of our time, and I know we put a lot of time in on this issue.
It's like at this meeting, the city hasn't, there's nobody here from the city. And, they think it's all going to go away. It's not.
I'm a little reluctant to get into water quality. I always thought we're a water quantity on this board. And it all started with this drain at the Schurz ditch, and it's too small and it's overwhelmed, and that's definitely our area. Now, this well deal is kind of a sideline, and I'm not sure we're standing on legal ground there. I don't know.
I think the way we get to that point with the wells, and John hinted at this earlier, the city has offered to take over that Schurz ditch as part of their responsibilities, and before this board would relinquish authority to them, they want to feel that they're doing that. You're going to want to make sure you're doing that on good terms or in good faith. And I'm hearing certain concerns from board members, certainly from the public, regarding that right now.
Well, you can't, it's really difficult to have any good faith with the city because, number one, the Series Farms that just bought that land, they're in a quandary in talking to them. When I went over and talked to them in South Bend, and they attended the meeting here, they don't know what, when the Morrisons owned it, it was they had their names on signatures on the petitions in 73, 80, and in the 90s, and nothing is done. And I'm the only one, and he said that, one of the guys from Ceres said that they're following my lead. My lead can only take, you need to get the people here that are responsible for it, the city, number one, and the item, and they need to look at this. They can't make a decision upon what they're told, because it's all, a bunch of bull, that's coming from the city. And, it's, DNR needs to be here, item needs to be here, the city needs to be here, and
I think the health department should be too.
Health department too. If there's contamination in the city wells right now on Highway 2, 1,500 feet to the east, if there's contaminations from the Arconic site, the plume underneath there, which it's there, it's in the remediation reports. Why was the bakery? They had to shut their wells down on a certain date because of the movement of that plume. One well supplying one factory making bread. Granted, they're using a lot of water, but when you take 60 or 70 wells, whatever the number they did put in out there, 200 gallons per minute out of 27 of them running at a time. What happened to that plume underneath there? Just because you got a sample after everything's diluted, the water's diluted because you've been running this well for 2 weeks, that doesn't, you have diluted pollution. That's all you have. Well, we got it underneath the limits where we can still put it in a pipe or whatever, or run it downstream. But east of LaPorte, they were pumping that well, both of those wells, and dumping it on top of the water, trying to clear up, make a better test. The pollution's there already. It's just, how much more are you going to take?
We're not arguing with you, Louis.
Okay. I thank you.
Just a minute, all right? I'm working on something here in my head, but the drainage board has to have a code we follow.
Right.
Does it have anything to do with the quality of water?
That would be man sitting beside me. It's MS4. Drainage board, just as
We
you said,
work
is
together,
quantity.
So we want to keep working together.
Right.
Can we call an emergency meeting and tell them they need to send someone with their documentation on this project from those entities that you were marking and get that, so it's something that happens real soon here?
48-hour notice.
What do you guys think? Help me out. I don't want to be alone here. I don't want to talk on your part.
48.
Can't leave it to the city.
What do you guys think?
I think it's try, but they ain't gonna show.
Because they're busy?
They'll say it's not your jurisdiction.
Well, we like to hear your input, not just letting us talk and talk until we get your input.
I mean, they're busy and
that's why they should send their secretary or someone under them that
I think
can
they
come in and bring their records with them.
I think they could forward you the records, but I doubt Indy's going to drive up here. But you could try. It's always free to ask.
There was somebody from Indianapolis that was up here over the ground, walking around, inspecting it. They showed up, surprise inspection. I got a copy of that report. I emailed it to board members. I emailed the pictures of the bentonite material that was on crates next to the wells, with enough in the background that you can see, the location of it. I forwarded all of the test results that I took personally, that we had a third party take, that the city took, that the state took. I forwarded documents that were either provided by the factories or regarding the factories from the state agencies that oversaw that part of the contamination from the factories. So I've sent the board everything that I've had and that has been provided to me, including a summary of how they evaluated the project, such as LaPorte did have the permits and the mitigating things where they had said the next time we want it done this way. But for the most part, they were all satisfactory reports. Now, what we have here is some evidence to the contrary by a member of the public that's showing us the material that he says has been used to backfill these wells. That is concerning to me. It's concerning to the board. One side is wrong and one side is right. To what degree, I don't know. But the people that I deal with in the city that are on my board, if there was a problem, I think they would want to bring light to it and fix it. They would not want to cover up
They need to be
contamination.
invited to this meeting. Because somehow this water quality thing needs to be out of our LaPorte County Drainage Board's hands. We're back to what you said. We oversee who's getting flooded by the water and how do you fix that problem.
Right,
I don't think there's anything in our code that we should be touching any of this. But when we see that it's not getting done, somebody's got to step up and say, do your job.
I have just one other thing to add, and Brad could...
Make it quick if you would.
Brad could back me up on this. But on any water that's going into a legal drain, if there's a question of pollution, that is covered, item and DNR, and that's covered all by state law. Even if there isn't pollution, you do not have to accept their water. They're dumping water as we speak today. It's still running on, to the south of us. And you need to tell them that instead of, you want to get everything worked out. You aren't going to work out anything with the city, because the last 40 years has proven that. They're not here discussing anything. You need to tell them to shut the project down and leave it shut down until everything is addressed. You have that right, and you can find that in the drainage laws where they can request to hook up to the Shear's ditch. You do not have to accept that water. Thank you.
That's where this all started, is them, whether they're directly or indirectly adding water to the ditch. That's what brings it under this board's jurisdiction.
Rick, you got anything to add to this right now? And did we were going to address you with something in the beginning of the meeting I said we'd get to before the end.
Well, I could add a few things. But, yeah.
And let's get what we promised you earlier, let's get that taken care of while you're up here.
Okay, well, here's what I got to say about that. I like Mr. Spears. I like his passion for the project. But you kind of been listening to the wrong guy.
I want you to get your mic.
I think you should be looking at the approvals that they did get from IDEM, not an assumption of what they didn't get from IDEM.
In another way to say this,
they did have permission from IDEM to do the project.
Needed to look at it.
They did have permission from IDEM also because in previous studies they found no pollutants. They found no volatile compounds. Now, I'm not here to argue with Mr. Spears or you, sir. I'm just telling you I have read that myself. I understand Mr. Mozinski's concerns as well. However, IDEM permitted them because before Alcoa ever built that big addition on, they had to be pumping for 28 quarters, 7 years. 7 years to get all down to acceptable levels, which they did for IDEM. Now, Louis doesn't agree with IDEM, that's cool. Sometimes I don't agree with IDEM. I work pretty closely with them. So I understand Mr. Spears' concerns. However, when you look at the actual reports and what they had to do, our county met it. So now, here comes the city later on and they're wanting to do a project right across the street. Mr. Coulter, if I took your thumbnail and put it in the center of this room, you probably wouldn't hardly be able to see it. I know I wouldn't unless I put my glasses on, and you'd have an advantage over me, sir.
Oh my God.
But here's the thing. There's a blue shale layer way down, okay? And the Arconic folks' site would be the size of your thumbnail compared to that blue shale all the way around. Now, we have seen documentation, I've read documentation of all this. There is no invisible clay barrier that somebody thinks that when you suck this water from here, it's going to be coming over here, and oh my gosh, all this stuff comes over to here. That's not going to work in that size. Your thumbnail in a room this size, there's no barrier. It's all the same water. And I'm not here to argue with you, Louis, or anybody, or the attorney, or Mr. Poland. I'm just telling you that the information that is out there, okay, IDEM gave them permission to do this project. Now, when it comes to dewatering, okay, we should probably be considered with IAC 10- whatever it is, okay, because they could have stripped the site off and used material which has the stones in it. That's cool. Because the kind of dewatering they did when you shut those wells down, you are supposed to use bentonite in the bottom. Mr. Spears has mentioned he didn't see much. I saw a couple different pallets of it. Okay, I was never there when they were actually dumping it in. But those kind of wells, when you decommission them, you're supposed to backfill with the materials off of that same project in that same site area, and preferably what you took out of it. So if they've stripped that site to build roads and do stuff right there nearby, they had the same material. I'm not saying they did anything right, I'm not saying they did anything wrong. But if you look up the IAC code for shutting down those kinds of wells, they kind of did what they were supposed to do. But I'm not here to argue with anybody. So that's just a few comments. I could make a lot more, but I'm just going to stop right here, okay? Thank you.
What did we need to answer for you? What did we need to answer for you earlier? I said we'd take care of by the end of the meeting.
Taking care of what? I'm sorry.
I think it was about telling you to have other people come to the next meeting.
Well, I don't know if I can get them here. Marty Moppin probably won't be able to. But
Is that what we were to answer to him?
that's who we talked with at first, and that's what I said at first, is that I tried to get a hold of Mr. Maupin, and I did get a hold of him. And then he turned me on to these other folks, which I got turned on to other folks. So I happened to actually get that information about the decommissioning of the wells themselves, because when you go through Indiana code, when it comes to wells, there's pages and pages and pages of how you decommission all these different kind of wells. And it's a lot more stringent if they're drinking water wells, but these weren't. So, okay?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd only like to add that I'd like somebody in here, if you'd like to bring it to me, where in the Indiana statutes under the drainage, not the drainage, but the well drillers, where did item or the DNR give the city permission to not follow the law? And that is to plug the well from the bottom all the way up. I want to know where they got permission to put in a 24-inch bore and only use a 12-inch casing, and then pull a casing and let it all collapse in. It's all followed, it's all in the well drillers' laws. I want to see it exactly. Have them bring that in. Thank you.
Does she have comment, public comment?
She has one question.
All right. Go ahead. State your name again.
Alina Yersaida. First of all, I'd like to say I don't know the gentleman that was up here. He does not speak for me. Secondly, I had a problem with Mr. Hendricks. I worked on Dwayne Perry's campaign at the start, and he and I had conflict at a meeting that he attended. And because of the situation with him regarding that, and the situation that I have with the highway department, they put a curb in front of my house, and now it's funneling 4 sides of the road into my septic fields. I feel like I'm coming to this meeting, I'm pleading, and I will not get anywhere.
Elena, if I could,
can give you all of the...
Elena, let me clarify one thing. Mr. Hendricks is not a board member. All right, he's here as he's not a voting member.
Right, but
he's not
he
a board
gives
member.
advice to these gentlemen, and she stated that she cleaned the ditch in a 2-year period, and that did not happen. Anything that I say, if I go and ask for records, the attorneys stop me. If I go and I ask for any information, I'm getting stopped, not just by this board, but by other boards. I bought that house for $30,000. I've sank now another $40,000 into that home. I'm improving the property. I have my certificates. I do everything that I'm supposed to do. A Connex building, a shipping container should be a no-brainer on that property. There is plenty of room. I encourage each one of you to go out to that property and assess that property. I will bring anything here to the board that you ask me to bring, but I'm telling you, I want to state for the record that I don't feel comfortable that what I ask for will be approved.
All right.
I don't know what to do as far as filing a complaint or where to go. Everyone that I talk to, it's like this. My head is here and here's the wall.
All right, I understand. Thanks.
Yeah, we gotta move.
Yep. We're adjourned till February 11th.